Well, I guess let's go right into it. So,
Okay.
for those who don't know, how long have you how long have you been in real estate?
14 years.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And how long have you been in real estate?
2 months. Brand new, baby.
Brand new. I know. I like it. I like it. But you've already experienced some stuff.
Yeah. It's been crazy. I mean, I think it's the biggest thing is it's such a learning curve. Like I feel like I'm just like a sponge, just like
Yeah.
learning so much, especially just not being on my own, but shadowing you and like everything that you're doing. I'm like, whoa, I had no idea that there was so many different like moving pieces. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but it's been really cool. Yeah. So I'm sure you have some crazy stories to tell us about.
Oh
over
my
the
gosh.
years.
I know. I know. We always talk about fun experiences. And
Yeah,
remember,
yeah,
an
yeah.
agent just came in our office, said, what was your, wildest experience? And I started thinking about it. And I guess thinking, one of them, and I got multiples, right? But this kind of goes with safety with, like agents and sellers and buyers and stuff. And I know you have a couple already, even only 2 months in.
Yeah.
But I have a house, had a house, a listing in Seminole, big house, like 6,000 square feet. And my clients weren't there, thank goodness, but they were out of town. They just happened to look at the cameras. And when they looked at the cameras inside their home, 6,000 square foot home, there was a squatter in his underwear making toast and doing laundry.
Making himself real comfortable.
I was mortified.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, holy tamale, not only because my client was like, oh my gosh, she called the cops. The cops came, they arrested him and threw him in jail.
Yeah.
But what happens if an agent had walked in and
Yeah.
showed at that time?
Yeah. Well, hopefully I had multiple slices of bread to provide.
To share?
He's cooking breakfast. It's a full service showing.
Oh my God,
Yeah.
in his underwear and doing laundry.
No, that's horrible.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It was, so you go, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And then again, my client was freaking out because it's her house, right? And then I'm
Mhm.
freaking out not only because it's my client's house, going, oh my gosh, what a crazy story.
Mhm.
But what if I walked in?
Yeah.
I mean, think of the scariness, like the awkwardness and or scariness,
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's great. That's like when we went to one of your listings, and I guess, well, originally I think the cops had to evict the sister because she was like squatting in the house, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, after the
Yeah.
mom had left and everything. And then we pull up to like take pictures or something, and the windows are cracked. There's like her car is literally like in the backyard, like clearly hidden. Yeah.
Yep.
And we like look at
Yep.
each other and we're like, what do we do? You
Yeah.
know, like, do we go in?
I just got goosebumps again because
know.
remember we called our client
Yeah.
saying we're not comfortable going in there
Yeah.
because we think she was squatting in the house that she got evicted from.
Yeah. And it's crazy because it's like, then we come to find out when we went back the second time that the window was just broken, I think. But she was
Yeah.
in there, I think, that
was.
one time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, what do you, for me being new agent, I'm like, oh God, what do we do? And you're
Right.
like, it's fine. We'll just.
We don't go in.
Yeah. Like one step
Carry
at a
some
time.
mace.
Yeah. I know.
Kind of
Yeah.
like your
Oh my God. Yeah.
was it
Well,
like your foreshowing or not showing, but yeah, it was kind of a preview.
yeah. Well, so like I'm doing the virtual tour weekly
right.
on Facebook. And so I'm like going thinking, I pull in and this guy, the neighbor, is like, peering over the fence, like, what's that show with Tim Allen?
Oh yeah. You can
And I'm
always
like,
see his eyes.
yeah. So I'm like, okay. And then he walks over and he's like, are you the agent? And I'm like, I'm not the agent, but I'm, an agent. And he was like, do you mind if I look? I'm the neighbor. I've been thinking about, buying the property. I was like, oh yeah, because we're like
Yeah.
in Paso Grill. I'm like, this is a nice, area. And he started making some strange comments to me. And I was like, oh God, you never know where it's gonna go. And
Yeah.
then upstairs, it was like this tiny little like alcove thing, and there's like a joint bathroom and shower combo. Is a kind of weird
Yeah.
setup. And he made a joke of like trying to almost push me in there. And I was like,
Oh, yeah,
and
no,
I'm
no.
like, no. Like, so I do like one of those like duck and weave moves. And I'm like, all right. So then I go downstairs and kind of like try to get him out as nicely as possible. Then I'm like locking the door. And after that, I'm like, man, not that I want to like carry, but I'm like, maybe I need like some kind of mace or stun gun or something.
Right.
So my boyfriend and I go into a pawn shop and and I'm like to the guy, I'm like, hey, here's what happened. And I was like, I just want
Yeah.
to make sure that I have something to like protect myself. I'm thinking taser,
Right,
And he's like,
right.
with the taser, you actually have to like be really close to the person. And I'm like, well, I don't know. I've never
Yeah.
actually thought to buy a taser in my life, And he's like, okay, well, yeah, maybe pepper spray. So they have this little, he comes back and it's called Bling It On pepper spray. It's all bedazzled. And I was like, that's the one. That's
That's
it.
for you.
like,
But I am going to
but
say, what could you have done? Well, no, I guess you couldn't have done that. I was going to say, could you have done for that not to happen? But you would let him in.
yeah.
So that's where, learning those safety tips,
Well, yeah,
where
yeah.
people aren't behind you, you let them, you walk behind those people, but also you lock the door when you're doing your videos and stuff.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
we just need to be mindful of, for other agents and for ourselves and for the sellers and the buyers, safety,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and I think in any career, I think we were talking about that too. It's like no matter where you
Absolutely.
are, I think it's good. And like when we talked about it afterwards, I think the best thing was like just debriefing it and saying like, okay, it's not so much like you need like the self defense where you learn like the elbows and like the scratching up the eyes, and it's like what preventative measures can you do where you're like, okay, like I need to protect myself, like you said, like don't park in the driveway so that you always have a way to get out, or like let them go into the bathroom or the closet or whatever, and you kind of like follow them,
Yep.
and
Follow
allow.
them up the stairs.
Right.
Don't be the
Yeah.
one leading up the stairs.
Yeah.
Don't put yourself in a situation where you can be trapped.
Yeah.
Car, physical, whatever,
Mhm.
always let them and give them their space.
Mhm.
And also, like you said too, after that, I think we talked about you just letting people know where you are,
Yeah.
check in with your office if you don't have a team, check in with, someone, your boyfriend, your spouse, your whoever, to let them know where you are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, and then, I think and then you caught me the second time when I
I
was doing
did. I didn't know if you were going to mention that, but
I
I
was doing
did.
the other virtual tour, and then all of a sudden I'm like, I hear someone open the door, and I'm like, and then you're like, "It's me." I'm like, "Oh, thank God." But you're like, "You need to lock the door," because it's like,
Exactly.
especially that one was like a 3-story house, not
It
even
was
like, yeah,
huge.
yeah. And it's like you
Huge.
wouldn't know someone crept in, I guess, unless
Yeah.
it's like eerily quiet. But
Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
I
I did.
know.
I wanted to make
Yeah.
sure after that first episode that you locked the door behind you,
Yeah.
but I know you'll do that
Yeah,
now.
now I am. Yeah, I'm like on it. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So
Yeah.
I got another funny story. This one happened recently. So I got a phone call from a buyer that I had talked to like a year ago, and she was looking to buy something on the beaches, in the million range, no problem. She kind of went away and hadn't heard from her in probably like a year. And then suddenly she called and she's like, "Hey, I'm ready." And I'm like, "Okay, great." And she was like, and she was like, "I want to run an offer on a house in Treasure Island, but the listing agent won't help me." And I'm like, "Okay, well, great. Meet me at my office. We'll write the offer." And she's like, "Great." And I said, "Just make sure you bring proof of funds. You got to have proof of funds, and let's meet at the office and we'll submit the offer, today." She's like, "Absolutely. I want it done. Let's meet at 2 o'clock." She showed up at the office, and thank God I'm at the office, right? Because, this was kind of freaky. Not scary freaky, but just makes you scratch your head. Never had this happen. So we met in my office, and she sat down. She had a cute little dog and a little stroller. So, I mean, it looked all fine. The dog was well trained and groomed and everything. She looked a little off, but everyone, I mean, has their own style, whatever. So I'm sitting at my desk and I'm like, "All right, you got proof of funds?" She's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "All right, well, let's just start with the offer price. The house is in Treasure Island. It's on the water. It's listed at 1.9. What would you like to offer?" You ready? $1.
Oh my God.
I said, "Excuse me?" And she goes, "$1." And I'm like 1.00. And she's like, "Yeah." And I'm like,
You're like,
and then I forgot what she did. And then after I was like that and stunned, she picked up her phone and said, "Look, I got proof of funds. I got $1.45 in my account."
Oh my God.
I looked at her and I said, "Ma'am, I can't write this offer." She goes, "Okay, so you will not write it for me." And I said, "No." I stood up, she walked out, and that was it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. That's like, well, yeah, like where do you even it's so
$1.
crazy. Yeah, because it's like on the phone you don't know.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, and somebody, if they don't tell you what offer they want to make before you meet them, you're like, "Okay, come on in." Like, yeah, you're like all excited we're gonna get like $1 million house under contract. Yeah. And
But,
then
I checked my notes in my CRM and it showed that I had talked to her about a year ago. She was looking for a million plus, somewhere on the beaches. So it all didn't sound crazy.
yeah.
But then when she showed up and said $1, and I'm like 1.00, yep, $1. And and then she showed me the proof of funds of $1.45 in her bank account on her phone.
Yeah. Oh my God. And like, then you have to just like try to diffuse that because it's like, I mean, I'm like,
So
oh,
then she leaves, and I mean, hopefully she's not around or anything, but I saw her walking on Golf Boulevard twice with her dog in the stroller.
She's
I'm
looking for a
like,
new house. She's looking for the $1 wonder that she
the
can.
$1 wonder. I did tell her, I said, you do realize I'm not going to accept a dollar.
Yeah.
Even if this property is like priced at 20,000,
Yeah.
a dollar's not going to work. And she
No.
was like, okay. And she was
Yeah,
fine with
took
just,
it. Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. I mean, I guess
oh
at
my
some point,
gosh.
like, I don't know. You gotta take everybody as they come, right?
It is. It's just so funny though, and I got I guess like another funny because we were talking about stories like I said, the few days ago and this is not my story, but another agent told me in the office and I just love telling this one because sellers it just goes to show, be careful who you hire because an agent had called a listing agent, looking for a property, knowing that there was a property on the water. I think it was in Reddington. And one of our agents called this listing agent and said, hey, I can't find your listing on the MLS because you don't have it marked as waterfront. And it's a waterfront home. It's a home on the water with a dock, whatever. The listing agent, swear to God, said, it's not waterfront. The water's in the backyard.
Oh my
The agent in my office just knew she couldn't help
Yeah.
and knew that it wasn't their job to teach this listing agent how to market their listing
Yeah.
and just hung up and whatever. I don't know if that property ever sold,
Yeah.
but really?
Yeah. Yeah.
Really?
That's insane. I know. Well, it's crazy too because you see like all these other agents too. We looked at one that came on the market the other day, and it was like there's like in the listing photos, there's like dishes in the sink and like just trash everywhere, and you're like, wait, why did we not like move this? You know what I mean? But it's
Right.
like I guess it's like just not front of mind for some people, or I'm not sure, but yeah, that was so fun. I can't believe water
But
in
it
the
hinders the
backyard.
sale of the home.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
They're
yeah.
doing an injustice to the seller so much.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like the one that we just went on that listing appointment in Seminole.
Mm-hmm.
And remember, it was, I mean, stuff everywhere.
Yeah.
The kitchen's falling in, there's junk everywhere. I mean, remember, and then he fixed it up, which surprised us. Like,
Yeah.
most people don't have, like, when they live like that, they can't fix it up like that, kind of like that one where it had all the dishes and stuff in it. Well, those people just thought it was normal, and that's fine.
Mhm.
There's nothing wrong or right to how you want to live. But some people do surprise you
Yeah.
and fix it up really nicely, So I don't know what happened with that listing that had all the dishes in the sink, but
Yeah. You
we
never
should,
know.
yeah. Oh my
But it's
gosh.
funny though too because I think in Florida especially like for me at least what I found is like you never judge a book by its cover. You know what I mean?
Agreed.
Just speaking to that guy, I think like what a sweet person too, but I think it's like the way that originally he had presented himself, we were like, I don't know if the
Oh, he had
pictures are going to
holes in
come.
it. Yeah, he had
Right,
holes
holes
in
in
his
his shirt and
shirt.
everything. And then the like the way that what the final product was immaculate and we're like, whoa, you know what I mean?
Unbelievable.
But I think that's to the point of, also with people you meet that are wearing like at open houses and stuff, you never know. People can come in wearing like raggedy t-shirts and
Yeah.
flip-flops and backwards hat and they're like looking for a $3 million house. I
Absolutely.
think like that's just the beauty of this area, I guess, is like everyone's kind of like you never know what you're gonna get, right?
Right,
Like,
right,
or you
absolutely.
get to somebody who looks really nice and they want to offer $1.
She had $1.45 in her account. Oh my God. I literally had to like call people. I think I even called you or I don't think I could get you on the phone.
No, you came to our open house,
Oh, that's
remember? Yeah, and you were like, "Do I have a story for you?"
It was, I just still couldn't believe it. She was so serious,
Mhm.
and again, she didn't look homeless. She had a well-groomed dog,
Mhm.
it was just,
Yeah.
how much?
$1.45. That's so funny.
Oh
Well,
my
didn't you
God.
have one where like the girl showed up with like thousands of dollars in like cash? Like the
Yes.
complete opposite situation, right?
Young girl. She was
Yeah.
21 years old and had like $32,000 in cash in a bag, in like a small duffel bag to pay. It was actually for a tenant, or excuse me, for a landlord that I was helping him, rent his, rental. And that's how she wanted to pay for the full year up front.
That's crazy. I mean, I guess cash is king.
Oh, no.
That's what people think, I think. You know what I mean?
No, the owner was like, "Oh, heck no. I'm not taking
Yeah.
that. That's embezzlement. She has to go and deposit that and write a check."
Yeah.
And she did,
Yeah.
and she got the place, but yeah, it was like $32,000 in cash.
Oh my gosh.
Somebody
Yeah.
asked me, was it all in ones? And I'm like, I have no
You're like,
idea.
I didn't sit there and count it. Well,
I didn't look at it.
yeah, yeah. When I was in the car business, we had like a few people that would come in and they'd buy a car that was like obviously like a used car or something like
Mhm.
that. But they would, you all of a sudden they pull out like their what you thought was their purse, which is really just like a sack of money. And they just yeah. And I've seen
No
like
way.
$22,000 all counted out, and I'm like, you
And y'all
know,
took that?
yeah. And a few years, I'm like, this is like the most money I've ever seen in person. You know what I
Well,
mean?
I guess that does make sense because I mean that's just like going to a retail and you can pay cash
Yeah.
check or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That is so
Yeah, yeah.
funny.
It's like old school, you know?
My gosh.
Yeah. I'm
Well, my
like,
client at the time did not want to take it. He
yeah.
wanted a check.
Mhm. Yeah. No, it's crazy to
So,
think about that too. And it's so funny. Someone said the other day, they were like, the internet might go out for a couple of days. I'm like, what would we do?
I
We would all just like sit in our houses like confused. I mean, and it's like going back
gosh.
to like what 1980 or whatever
Yeah.
before like we were all hooked on our phones and everything.
Right,
Yeah,
right. What
kinda
would you
crazy.
do?
Yeah, I don't know.
That would be crazy. Oh my God.
But
So, and then I have one other. So this is, we're talking about just crazy stories. This was not really a safety for, the clients or, for the agents or whatever. But I was representing the seller, and this was a while back. This is actually quite a few years back in Georgia. And we've gone through everything, of course, the inspection, we've gone through the appraisal, we've gotten to all the steps, like the 184 steps that you're supposed to
yeah.
go through to get to closing, which is crazy. But we make sure it goes smooth, right? So we're all excited. We're all about to leave to go to closing. It's an hour before closing, and the seller calls me and says, I'm not closing. And I'm like, excuse me? And they're like, yeah, we're not closing. Our daughter doesn't want to move. And I'm like, well, I understand that, but legally you have to. I mean, you're bound in a contract. We have done everything. We are literally closing. I mean, the buyer's funds are in. I mean, it's an hour before closing. The buyer has a moving truck coming to your house in an hour and 30 minutes. He's homeless because they're moving into their home that we're closing in an hour. He refused, said that he's not going to, and he's not going to closing. So then I called his wife, going like, what the heck? And she said the same thing. Their daughter doesn't want to move, so they're not closing. I'm like, you do realize that you are going to be sued probably for damages. You're going to have to pay the full commission, and you're also going to lose the earnest money on the home that you have under contract to purchase.
Yeah.
They didn't care.
Wow.
They
That's
didn't care.
crazy. Yeah.
So not only did they default on the listing that I had with them, their primary home, they defaulted on the home that they put earnest money down on. That was like, I think it was like $15,000 or $20,000 earnest money on the new home that they were supposed to do back-to-back closing.
hmm
And the buyer, they offered to pay the full commission to me and the buyer's agent, which was great, right? But that's not what we're there for. We're there to make sure all parties are happy. And then they offered, I think it was like $5,000 or $10,000 to the buyers for, damages and inconvenience or
yeah.
whatever.
Wow.
The buyer said, heck no, got a lawyer and went through, I think it was mediation. They didn't have to go to court, but they ended up settling for $30,000.
Oh my goodness.
They paid $30,000 plus. It was like probably $40,000 in commission. They lost their $15,000 on the new home, the earnest money on the new home. And they lost over $80,000 just because
Wow.
they chose not to close 1 hour before closing.
That's
I
insane.
mean, we were under contract for 30 days.
Yeah.
How did you not have this feeling a week ago, 2 weeks ago?
That's crazy.
Is that not crazy?
So are they still in the house? Do you know?
I don't know. When I close a chapter, I close a chapter.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I have these experiences to share with, our
Yeah.
clients, our sellers, and our buyers. But I don't know. I'm sure because they just lost 80 grand
Yeah.
to stay there. I would think that they're still there. I don't
Yeah.
know.
That's crazy.
I
Well,
know.
So you've been doing real estate for 14 years, but before that, you were doing outside sales since you were like really young, right? Like
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
your early 20s. Yeah.
23.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was 100% commission. My first job was Cisco Foods, 100% commission when I was 23 years old.
Yeah.
So, and then I, moved to another company that I was there for like 20 years. And so that's all I've done is 100% commission on my life. I don't know any different,
Yeah.
you know?
So how is that? I mean, obviously, I think like I can see that there's a lot of ways where you've learned to like diffuse, for lack of a better word, like bombs exploding. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So is that something that you feel like you had naturally, or do you feel like that's something that you kind of like evolved over time in sales, like just to be able to like keep your cool and you know what I
It's a
mean?
great question. I think when I was younger, I didn't keep my cool as much as I do now.
Yeah.
Because you're younger, you're crying when you have like, because even back when I was in outdoor sales, we have issues, right? I mean, that's just life, I
Yeah.
mean, it wasn't as much of a problem solving industry as I am in now. But it also, if the truck didn't show up, or if, a product was out of stock, or, if a client was upset, then of course you get upset.
Yeah.
So I think that over time, so I'm 53, so I've been doing it for 30 years, that it just got better, right? Because I remember in my 30s, some other salespeople literally almost having heart attacks because we take on so much emotions and we want everything so perfect if you're that person.
Hmm.
And when things aren't going right, you take it so emotionally
Yeah.
that it can bring up, anxiety and high blood pressure and all that stuff. And I remember in my 30s, a sales rep that I worked with literally almost had a heart attack in their 30s. And that's when I was like, okay, I need to take on the emotions for my clients and I need to make sure that my customer service is over the top because I'm on 100% commission. But
Hmm.
I also need to make sure that I need to keep it cool.
Yeah.
And also, what I learned is the more cool, calm, and collect I am, my client is too.
Yeah, because they kind of chameleon to your energy. Yeah, I remember us talking about
Absolutely.
that the other day.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember like when I worked in marketing for a real estate company a few years ago, I had a bad day. And I just remember I was like, we had our big company sales meeting and I was like crying. And one of the guys that like kind of pulled me aside that I was closer to in the company, and he was like, kind of talked me through it. And he was like,
Yep.
listen, take a deep breath. We're not brain surgery, like brain
Yep.
surgeons. Nobody's dying on the table. We're in the real estate business. Like,
Yep.
he's like, nothing that you do right now is going to dramatically ruin anybody's life or anything like that. Like, just take a deep breath, you know?
Yeah.
And I think as
Yeah.
you obviously there are certain situations where it is like a big deal, you know what I mean?
It
Where if
is. Yeah.
somebody's moving their whole life, you know what I mean?
Yep.
But to be able to kind of like neutralize the situation or at least problem solve, right? I think that's the
Mhm.
biggest thing. I love that, like the problem solving aspect of it. It's like you have to kind of pivot and like evolve to like, okay, what's gonna get this done? You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Not getting caught up in the emotions of it.
And that's hard to do because you just reminded me of a situation. This was in Georgia, so it's a little bit ago. But and again, an hour before closing, I get a phone call. I'm representing the listing age or the listing, and I get a phone call from the lender saying, "By the way, the buyer just got disqualified to buy this home." An hour before closing, my client, my seller, has already moved out, is in a U-Haul truck driving. This is in Georgia, was about to drive and move to Florida, and we're not closing. And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" Well, apparently a 30-day late notice hit her credit because lenders do pull credit the day of closing. So buyers, just know, don't go buy anything until after closing.
Yeah.
But what happened with her is she had a 30-day late ding on her credit that hit the day of closing. So when the lender pulled the credit to confirm that they didn't go buy a Mercedes or something, that made her credit score below the, requirement, and so she was disqualified to purchase.
Oh my god. So what do you even do in that
Oh,
situation?
I well, I didn't call the seller immediately because, like, as I was talking to the lender, I literally was not taking no for an answer, and I don't remember the lender's name again, this was in Georgia, so I don't remember the lender's name, but he basically said, "Sorry," and I'm like, "Oh, no, 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 no.
Yeah.
I am telling you right now, you have to do something. If there's a will, there's a way. Figure it out, but I'm not taking a no. We are closing on this. Figure out how to do it."
Yeah.
I mean, I challenged him, very sternly too, because I was like, "Oh my gosh, I don't have the heart to tell my seller he
Yeah.
has to move back in his house.
Yeah.
He's already secured a place in Florida and everything."
Mhm.
So I hung up with him. Probably an hour later, he called me. He goes, "All right, we found a plan B. The uncle's going to co-sign, but we need 2 weeks." I said, "Fine,
Yeah, 2 weeks is
fine."
better than not at all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I called my seller then because we had a solution and told him the whole situation. Of course, he was upset, but he loved that we had a solution. Slept on his mom's sofa for 2 weeks. We closed,
Oh.
and then he moved to Florida.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
That's crazy. Well, you
It's
are like you have this like mama bear energy with your clients,
I
which is
do.
like you are very like passionate about that, which is something that I love and I like obviously want to embody as well. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Where it's like
Yeah.
it's a protectiveness, but it's also like I'm going to stand up for you in ways that you can't stand up for yourself because if they don't know the industry, you know what I mean?
Yep.
They don't know sometimes if there is a solution or there's not, and you kind of have to like step in and be like, okay, there is going to be a way that we can fix this 9 times out of 10,
Absolutely.
right? We just
Yeah.
have to get creative, you
And
know?
agreed, because how many other agents would have said, "Oh, bummer. Okay, guess we're not closing," and talk to the seller, "Hey, we need to go back on the market." I wasn't putting up with that. I'm
Yeah.
like, "Oh, no, don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
And I literally said to him, think outside the box. This has to close.
Yeah.
And he did.
Yeah.
And he got the uncle to co-sign and we saved the deal.
Yeah.
And then my client was able to move to Florida and everything was fine. But, I think our job as an agent, and this is my ethics and morals, right, is to carry a lot of the emotions for my client because they don't know,
Yeah.
and they would just say, oh, okay, I guess there was nothing else to do. Oh, no. I really think if there's a way, there's a will, or if there's a will, there's a way. And most things, again, to your point, not always, but most things can be resolved.
Yeah. Well, it's funny. And I think the funniest thing too is we, like you say all the time, we learn so much every time. Like there's never like one transaction that's the same. And speaking of problem solving, it makes me think of your client where this is also problem solving and learning something new every day, is where we go to the house and the inspector, you're the listing agent, and the first inspector is like, this is a wood frame home.
Oh,
And
God,
the
this was
client,
crazy.
buys it as a block home. You look at
Like
it. We
12
all
years
look at it.
ago.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
like, okay, this is a block home. The way that the windows were, the way that, you could kind of tell it was a block
They used
home.
2x8s instead of 2x4s to sink in the window to make it look like a block home.
Yeah, and all the other houses in the neighborhood are block homes, so that, they must have just said,
The tax
okay,
records.
it's a block home. So the first inspector, I guess, was really nasty, right? And then the second guy comes out, he
was
immediately,
my guy.
Yeah, he immediately comes in and he's like, oh yeah, it's a block home. 30 minutes go by and he's kind of like poking around and he's like, let me just go in the attic really quick because I'm not sure.
Yep.
And comes back and he's like, no, it's a wood frame home. And then they were like worried that there may have been termite damage, I think it was, right?
Yeah.
And or water damage. And your client literally, so it was like me shadowing you, the inspector with his guy that he was training and shadowing him, and then your client, and then
the buyer's agent.
Yeah, the buyer's agent,
Yep.
who was also new.
Yep.
And then your client is on his hands and knees in the closet, sawing the wall open with a handsaw. And we're all like the peanut gallery, like hovering over him. The son walks in. He's like got an 18-year-old son. He's eating like a ham sandwich. And he's just like, what's going on? Like, and we're like,
party
and we're like,
closet.
but then you're able to physically see like, okay, this is, and because he was like, I can patch it up. It's no problem. But we need to figure out like what's going on. And I guess there was like water damage because the roof wasn't attached. And so they had thought it was termite damage, but it was actually from like a leak and, the whole thing. But it's like, there you go. Johnny on the spot, he was just like, all right, let's saw the wall open. And we're all there. And you're like looking at me, looking at the inspector's guy, looking at the buyer's agent. You're like, learning experience. You know what I mean? Because it's like, we were all just like, what is happening?
But then it goes back to show, I wasn't going to take, their information without confirming, because when they came back and said it is a wood home, my client's like, the tax records show it's a block home. I bought it as a block home. The windows are set as a block home. I mean, there is nothing that it's not a block home. And I'm like, all right, the lady wanted to I don't ever remember this, but she wanted to cancel the contract. I'm like, whoa. Let's get a second opinion first.
Yeah.
Because before she walks away, let's confirm that this was a block home because we were all sure that it was a block home. Ended up not being a block home, which is the first I've ever seen. Even my inspector was like, this was crazy.
Yeah.
But, we resolved the fact that they didn't have termite damage. We did look in the walls and the 2x4s, the 2x8s were great, except that one, that needed to be replaced from the water damage.
Yeah.
But we actually just closed on that one.
Yeah. Woo!
So, woo! Oh, my client is so tickled to death, and we just had to change it from a block to a wood and, it all worked out. But it's, you run into those. I mean, I always say the life of a realtor, we encounter so many crazy experiences, which makes us a better agent because then we can share those experiences, with our buyers and sellers.
Yeah. And then it helps prepare you, I think, for like the following transactions and situations because you're like, oh, okay, maybe I've seen this before or I've dealt with something similar. You know what I mean? And then you can kind of like learn from that. Yeah. I think it's so interesting. It's like so not monotonous.
Oh, totally. If you want the same thing
like
every day,
in and
don't be an agent.
Yeah.
It is just so funny. So, and I'm going to kind of like another thing just real quick on like crazy situations. I had a buyer and he wanted to go look at new construction. And, of course, at this time, this is probably I got my license 14 years ago. This is probably like 13 years ago when I wasn't really sold on the fact of why people need, agents because I had bought and, sold multiple homes as an investor. So, the buyer's name was John. Super excited. Him and his wife go to new construction. I said, great. I can't go with you, but go there, look at it, see which one you want. And if you do want the one that, we pulled up on the MLS that, he wanted to go see, that's fine. Don't sign anything, but write up, have the contract written up, all that stuff. And we're good.
Yeah.
Make sure you tell them that you have an agent and that, we'll review everything. And John was so excited. Him and his wife, Courtney, went to the new complex, found the home, fell in love with it, and got the contract, signed it. And he called me and said, oh my God, we found it. We got the contract, so now you'll get a copy of the contract or whatever. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm getting a copy of the contract? No, let's review the contract and then sign, because I specifically said, don't sign anything until I read the contract. And he's like, oh no, we signed everything. We put you down as the real estate agent and everything, just all excited. I'm like, well, no, I asked you, please don't sign anything before I read it, because that's why you have representation.
Yeah.
Lo and behold, the contract was great, except it had no financial contingency in it. It was a builder's contract, which leans heavy towards the builder in protection.
Mm-hmm.
And they put $10,000 earnest money and signed the contract. Yay, they put me as a realtor. That's not what you use me for. You use me for to make sure that I read the contract and see if there's anything missing, like a financial contingency, which unfortunately we needed, because several weeks into it, John lost his job.
Oh my gosh.
He could not qualify for the loan anymore.
And so did they lose all their earnest money?
$10,000.
Oh my gosh.
I literally called with tears and asking the builder's listing agent to please refund. I told her the whole story. I told them to go there. I told them to not sign anything. I told them to pick out, get the contract all written up. Don't sign anything. They didn't care.
Wow.
They kept the $10,000.
That is crazy.
And John was out $10,000 and had lost his job.
Oh my goodness. That's like that gives me like
Oh,
chills.
no, that was my aha. Literally, that was my aha on why representation is so important.
Yeah.
Right? Because he did everything in fun, and emotions and high emotions, and excitement. Didn't think he did anything wrong. He just forgot to not sign until I read, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I was very, hey, don't sign anything until I read it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was such an innocent mistake.
Yeah.
It was such an innocent mistake.
Yeah.
And then he lost his job, unfortunately, and then lost the $10,000.
That's crazy. I think I remember you saying one time too, when you had a listing, that I guess like you had gotten offers right away or something, and the lady made a joke of like, I don't know why I need you. Like the house sold so quickly. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what
yeah,
you're talking
and
about.
you're like, because there's a list of 184. The agent, has a written list of 184 steps.
Yes.
That you have to take after you get an offer, right? That's
Yep.
why you need an agent. It's not, people could put your house on Zillow. Yeah, great. But when it comes to like all the other stuff that you need to get done and make sure that you're covering, your side of the street or whatever you want to call it, that it's like, that's where you need your agent,
Yeah.
and that's what I think it's funny. Like so many people for sale by owners and things like that, they think that they're going to get like such a better deal. But I think there's a statistic, I think the statistic more better than I do, about how you actually end up like netting less money as a for sale by owner than you do with an agent, which is kind of wild.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I'll give you another example. So that one was really kind of funny, because that one was actually here, and it was just last year. It was a condo, and it went under contract in 1 hour. Cash.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And that's
yeah,
when
yeah.
the seller said,
that's why she's like,
yeah,
oh,
then
why
she
do
was
I
like,
need
yeah,
you?
why do I need you? And I said, well, this is now when my job kicks in.
Mhm.
I made sure that the offer was correct, right? All the contract, you got to make sure that everything's written. And then now I got to make sure that it closes,
Mhm.
and that we don't have any hiccups an hour before closing, which
Yeah.
I've had multiples, right?
Yeah.
As I've already given you a couple examples. But I just went on an appointment in Reddington, and the brother has a sister that has a house on the water. She got an offer from some investor or someone that wants it for like 1.5, and she wants to take it. And he goes, I have a feeling this house is worth so much more. Will you please go and do, your due diligence and whatever? And I said, absolutely. Because again, she's like basically a for sale by owner. And I don't remember the specifics, but I think it was like 1.5 cash closed in like a couple weeks or whatever.
Mhm.
And so when I went out there, and of course I ran my comps and I did my due diligence and saw the worth, I would list it today at 2.2.
Wow.
2.2 to 2.2 is the range I gave them.
Yeah. But what's crazy though is you think about like even certain properties like that they bought in like 1980, right? For like
Mhm.
$30,000, right? And then
Yeah.
it's like now, so they hear 1.2 million or 1.5 million, and they're like, whoa, like
That
big
might be
googly eyes
enough.
because they're like, that's so much money compared to what maybe I bought it for, my family bought it for, whatever. But it's like they are leaving so much money on the table because they don't have access to look up like all the recently solds in that area and look
Yep.
at the comps and all that other stuff. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I
Yep.
would probably be like, I mean, I'm the girl usually at the mall when the guys are like, come here, pretty girl, try my Dead Sea shampoo. I'm like, oh, okay, I'll spend $300. You know what I mean? Like, so if
Right.
someone came to me and they're like, hey, I want to buy your property for 1.5, before I got my real estate license, I would probably be that person. It's so
Right.
easy
Right.
to be, and same thing with those people that sign the contract. It's like, yeah, when you're excited and
You got
somebody's
emotions.
convincing you, it's like you're like, where do I sign? This is the
Yep.
greatest thing ever, and it's like you kind of do like have to have somebody whose energy is like, okay, let's bring you back down to earth because
Absolutely.
you're the mediator. I
Yeah.
think you have to be somebody that's like, okay, I know you're excited, but let's just make sure that we're doing everything correctly.
Yep. Yep. And fact check, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I tell people all the time, I'm in an industry, problem solving industry, but also you got money and emotions.
Hmm.
You put those two together and excitement usually, can mislead you.
Hmm.
So it's really good to have that person that can ground you and just show facts. And that's what we do, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we did with this recent one. And I don't think she's going to end up taking it. He's getting back to me and letting me know if she does want to list it. But she was kind of a year out anyways, but she wanted to see if she was going to miss a big deal, she wanted to take it. And so I was like, you got time, so we'll see how that happens. But again, that emotions. And
Yeah.
that's why representation is so, so important. I know there's a lot of people that read contracts all day, but they don't go through the experiences,
Hmm.
and say, oh my God, well, this has happened. So let's make sure we be proactive and not have some hiccups.
Hmm.
Because generally we usually do have hiccups. I just had a closing yesterday. And when I was talking to the seller last night saying congratulations, I was like, it really actually overall went pretty smooth.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Did we have hiccups? It's the one with,
Yeah.
cutting open the closet, but we closed.
Yeah.
And we closed $5,000 higher than list price.
Woohoo.
So he was super excited,
Yeah.
and, he had some surprises and stuff like that. So I think that's why it's really nice to partner
Hmm.
with someone that knows what they're doing to help you get through this experience, because it is a 30-day experience. Generally, it could be
Mhm.
45 days, it could be 15 days, but generally it's a month relationship of going through and having relationships with, a title company, a lender, the other agent, another buyer. I mean, out of town. I mean, we can go on and on. There's sometimes there's probate, sisters, brothers. I mean, there's just so much that it's nice to have someone that can ground you.
Yeah. Well, and I think especially because so many times moving is just like such an intense experience. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like even for me, like I've moved a lot of times and like even just renting, you know what I mean?
Yep.
And it's like stressful. It's
Mhm.
it's stressful, and B, it's like a lot of times when you're moving it is because you're going through a divorce or you're starting a family and
Yeah.
it's you need more space, but maybe it's a lot more money than you're used to spending or whatever it might be. It's like
It
there
is.
it's such an emotionally charged intense experience that like
Mhm.
you're not always like thinking as clearly as you believe you might. You know what I mean? As a
Absolutely.
buyer
Yeah.
or a seller. And I think
Yeah.
that's where it's like it's nice to have somebody that's kind of like in your pocket of like, okay, I'm gonna hold your hand and take care
Yeah.
of you through the process, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But also somebody that like knows what they're doing and is not afraid to like lay down the law if they need to
Right.
protect you, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, kind of
So
like what you call me, Mama Bear. I mean,
yeah.
that's what I think that's what's great is customer service too. I
Mhm.
mean, there's a lot of agents that just don't take it seriously, and they're like, "Oh, I'll do a couple of, a few transactions a year."
Mhm.
That's like I'm going to a dentist that does a root canal once a year, and you want to get a root canal. Would you go
Yeah.
to them?
No.
No, I wouldn't either. I don't even want a root canal, but
Yeah,
but it's the same
yeah.
thing, right? So if
Mhm.
you're going to want a specialist in that industry, then
Mhm.
find someone that knows what they're doing. I mean, if it's not us, just find someone. There's a lot
Yeah,
of good teams
yeah.
out there.
Yeah, and one of the things that I like that you say to people too is that I think when you know that somebody's considering buying or selling is that you say like, listen, like I know you're going to be going through a lot of interviews and I would just love for you to consider me, right?
Yeah.
Do your due diligence. That's hard to say.
I know.
But it's like, you do have to make sure that it's the right fit for you personality wise because of it's such an emotional experience, but also that you talk to somebody that feels like they're going to support you and protect you and know what they're doing. You know
Yep.
what I mean? So if it's not us, make sure that you're making the right choice. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And that's so important. I think it's like you have to, they say you work with people that you know, like, and trust. And I
Yep.
think the trust piece is so heavily important, you know,
Absolutely.
because you want to
Absolutely.
feel safe through such like a roller coaster ride, you know?
Yeah, yeah, in our industry. And
Yeah.
there's been a lot of times I've been on a listing appointment and they're like, "Yeah, I met with this person, this person, and this person." I'm like, "Well, I don't know this person." We look up their stats and they haven't done anything all year. Then this person, I'm like, "Oh, I already know them. They're a great team. So, may you not choose us. I hope you pick someone that, does this full time and
Hmm.
has all the experiences to help with a smooth transaction."
Yeah, for sure.
It's
Yeah, yeah,
super
yeah.
important.
Yeah.
So now I know you're so new, but what are your biggest ahas or takes from the industry so far? Like, what do you love? What scares
Yeah.
you? What?
Well, I think the most dangerous thing for me is going into $3 million houses because I fall in love with the new property every week. And I'm like crying into my bank account. I'm like, why am I not a millionaire that can afford this beautiful property? No, it is actually really hard to be doing this in our area because it's so beautiful. Like,
Right.
and all these, I mean, there's so many houses you walk into or even condos and you're just like,
Yeah.
my eyes are like that cartoon going out of my head because I'm like, man, it's beautiful. But it is really interesting to learn kind of like from 2 years ago what things are going for compared to like, what they go for now. Like I think a lot of things have kind of exploded, but also learning how to like kind of talk people off the ledge with that too, where I think a lot of people, even just knowing that I have my real estate license now, we have conversations about the market and for
Yeah.
them to say like, oh, the interest rates are so high. And I learned from you, like, you marry the house, not the rate. You
Yep.
can refinance, and also the interest rates are what, at a 30-year average.
Yep.
So in 1980, it was the same thing. You know what I mean?
1980 actually was
It was
like,
higher,
it was
right?
higher. So
Yeah.
the average
Hmm.
is where we are right now.
Yeah, and we all got spoiled with our 0% car loans and our 2% mortgages, you know
Yep.
what I mean, like 2 years ago, but I think
Yep.
now it's like it's kinda leveling out and, like, I love what you said, which is it's such a skill-based market, right? And
Yes.
so I think for me, just learning, okay, we can negotiate in unique ways to be able
Yep.
to support the buyer, or if the buying agent is coming in on one of our listings, is how do we counter that correctly,
Hmm.
and not lose the offer, but
Hmm.
make it the strongest contract that we can.
Hmm.
And there's so many like different things that I'm learning as far as like just even talking to mortgage brokers and saying like, okay, what unique programs are out there, right?
Hmm.
And learning to interview them
Yeah.
too to present to your buyer like, okay, here's the person that I think is going to best fit your personality,
Yep.
and your needs. Like if you're buying an investment
Yep.
property, this person's going to be way better for you than this person,
Right. Right.
but also giving them options too,
Absolutely. And I say this all the time. I don't know if I've said this to you a lot, but that's what I love about this industry. Several things. Everything's negotiable.
Hmm.
And if you can just think outside the box, you can make anything happen.
Yeah.
I mean, I truly leverage so well, and I've been doing it so long where people are like, "You just sold a house in Texas, how?" And I'm like, and I tell them how to do it and stuff like that. You just got to think outside the box,
Yeah.
leverage,
Hmm.
and know that everything's negotiable.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Well, it's funny when I was selling boats, people always come in there like, oh, well, is the price negotiable? And my manager at the time was like, everything in life is negotiable.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Exactly.
It's like, but like you said, it's like a house is only worth what somebody's willing to pay for it,
Yep.
and I think that patience is key, but also a sense of urgency. That's like a very delicate balance of like,
Yeah.
you don't want to wait 2 days to respond to somebody, but you also need to, if your client's saying like, hey, we're not ready to lower the price point yet. It's like, okay, let's wait a little bit. Like
Yep.
let you feel genuinely that you're making the right decision because it is the largest asset in people's financial portfolio,
Absolutely.
right? And so
Yep.
they need to feel confident that like you're there to support them and not just say, let's do a price reduction, let's do a price reduction, let's do a
Right.
price reduction.
Right.
It's like you need to feel like you're making that educated just choice. I'm
Mhm.
going to advise you what I think, but you need to like, take
Yep.
your time and do that as well.
And that's why I tell all my clients, this
Yeah.
is a team effort.
Mhm.
They're ultimately the boss, but we're a team.
Yeah.
And we have to have great communication weekly, if not more often,
Hmm.
and make sure that as a team, we're making the right decisions to get to, a contract.
Yeah.
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 So, yeah, no, it's a fun industry. And I mean, I know you're having fun with it and it's a lot to learn,
Oh yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's fun. You just got to have somewhat of strength
Hmm.
and just know that, everything works out.
Yeah.
I've had multiple, I coach the new agents and I've had multiple going, oh my God, I never submitted all the paperwork. So I know closing's not going to happen. And I'm like,
Mhm.
oh, you cannot hold up closing. You can't mess up anything that bad.
Mhm.
Um, in the sense of, I guess, like silly stuff like that.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's just learning all the things that, that help you get to the closing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah.
So,
I heard a podcast once, or I listened to a podcast once where they said like the two traits that you want to have to be successful or be like a compelling person is strength and warmth, right? So you
ah,
want to be somebody that's strong,
absolutely.
but also warm and able to like be emotional, right? And so
Right.
it's like I really believe that. I think you have that a lot too. It's like where you can relate to somebody on such a human level,
Hmm.
but you also have the strength to be able to like, get the deal done and do things that require, hard
Yeah.
work and like
Yeah. Yeah.
problem solving, like we talked
Right.
about.
It's
Yeah.
kind of like empathy and sympathy you got to have, right?
Yeah.
And you also got to be, protective of your buyer or seller that you're
Mhm.
working with,
Yeah.
and do the right thing and make sure that they're, getting the right experience as well,
Yeah, because just having one or the other, it's like then you're kind of like doing a disadvantage, right? Like that's you have to
Absolutely.
kind of balance. It's all about the balance of it, I
Hmm.
think,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, your first few months is been fun and you've seen a lot of experiences already.
Mhm.
Just wait 5, 10,
I
15
know.
years down
Yeah,
the
yeah,
road,
yeah. I know.
you
I'm
know?
gonna have to write a book.
Yeah. I should have written
I
some
know,
down.
right? Yeah.
I mean, when the agent asked a couple days ago the craziest stories, I'm like, I'm gonna have to brainstorm on
Yeah.
this,
Well, off the top of your head, it's hard to like remember
It
everything. You know what I
is.
mean? But then once
Yeah.
what you start thinking of one, then you start thinking of like 100, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like,
Yeah.
man, you could probably go on for hours and hours just thinking about like all the crazy stuff that's happened.
Yeah. We'll have to
Yeah.
start a journal.
I know, right? Yeah, yeah, yeah. On
So-
today's episode of Real Estate with Stacy and Helen. Yeah.
Right. The
Yeah.
life of a realtor is
know.
what
Yeah,
I
yeah,
say.
yeah.
I love
Life of
saying
a
that
realtor,
because
yeah.
it is up and down.
Mhm.
So good. Well, thank you. I'm so glad that you met with me and we chatted about these stories
Yeah,
because
yeah.
hopefully it will help someone somewhere.
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right.
Woohoo, our first
Yeah.
podcast.
Woo!